This week's parsha is Parsha Mishpatim. This week's Torah is based on a shir I heard from Rav Bernstein a couple of years ago. That comes as no surprise anymore, I don't think. And what Rav Bernstein wants us to do is to really take, there are many mitzvahs that are introduced in this week's parsha, and Rav Bernstein wants us to kind of focus in on the spirit of the parsha, the atmosphere it's setting for us. Now, how does it do that? So first, let's focus at the beginning. Start at the beginning. That's not a bad place to start. The first pasuk, right? And these are the ordinances that you should place before them. So the first question is, well, why does it have to say ve'ele and these? Why not just these? These are the ordinances that you should place before them. So a person explains that when like a parsha begins with ele as opposed to ve'ele, ele means it's disconnected from what came before. When it says ve'ele and these, it's connected to what came earlier. And we can actually see that borne out through the first Rashi of this week's parsha, because it says in the first one, right in the middle, Maharishoni mi Sinai, af elu mi Sinai. So just as the first mitzvahs were from Sinai, that is to say, the Aser HaDibra, the 10 Commandments, so too are these from Sinai. They're infused with the same godly message, the same God who gave us the earlier ones, gave us these mitzvahs. They're just as important. Okay. So what are these mitzvahs that are so important? Ki tikne eved ivri sheishani mi'avod uvashvit yetze l'chov shechenam. If you buy a Jewish bondsman, says article, aka a slave, he shall work for 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall go free for no charge. Okay, so I guess one question we can ask is, well, why are we beginning with an eved ivri, with this Jewish slave? That seems kind of unusual. Why not start with something else? Now that's actually not such a great question, because you could ask that of any mitzvah, right? Why this one? If you start with tefillin, if you start with tzedakah, no matter what, you could say, well, why are we starting here? So whatever, we may as well start with the eved ivri, why not? But the underlying problem here is, when it says ki tikne eved ivri, what does that mean, ki tikne? How does one purchase? How does one acquire an eved ivri? So it says Rashi, ki tikne miyad beitin shemachruhu b'gnivato, right? Because if you were to purchase through the Jewish court, who sold him in his slavery, that is to say, this person stole from you, and now when he's brought to justice, he needs to pay you back. He has no money, and because he has no money, but he needs to make recompense, he's sold to you as a slave in order to work off his debt. So first, just so we understand, when we speak about Jewish slaves, it's not the same thing as we have this image of these slaves treated horribly in the fields. According to the Jewish living, first they all get Shabbat off, so they don't work 1 day a week, and that's mandatory. And then even so, if a master and a slave, if there's only one pillow to share between them, then the slave gets it. If there's only enough food for the master and the slave gets it. There's actually a saying: a person who purchases a slave purchases a master, and moreover, the master is obligated to treat his slave as a brother. So it's not so simple. Anyway, okay. So, well, now that we know that, well, what's the lesson that we're trying to teach? Because after all, if we're already going to start teaching about the idea of like not stealing, then you should start with not stealing. And don't say that it started with the 10 Commandments, because the lo tignov in the 10 Commandments, and Rashi says this, means that you should not kidnap someone, like take them forcibly and force them into forced labor, right? Like sell them into slavery. That is what's prohibited in the 8th Commandment in the 10 Commandments. It's not stealing. Stealing comes much later. It's in several weeks from now in Kedoshim, in Chumash Vayikra. So not now. So in that case, it should start with, Mishpatim should start with don't steal, because if you steal and you don't have the money to pay it back, then you'll be sold as a slave. So why is this parsha beginning with this mitzvah of ki tikne eved ivri? Well, what's the deal? So the person explains. Well, that's because, so the goal of Mishpatim is, of course, to make sure that if someone damages your property or takes your property, then they have to pay you back, or they have to give it back, right? It's to make sure that your rights are protected. Okay. Or rather, that everyone fulfills their obligations not to take your stuff. But now, the Ber Yosef clarifies that actually there's a second mitzvah going on here, and that is to say, that's also to help other people to be productive. Because Rav Shimon Schwab says something quite beautiful. That think about this. There's this guy who stole from you. Now you're bringing him into your house. That's very scary. This is a criminal. He's convicted. He for sure did the crime, and you're going to bring him into your house. The answer is yes. Because what's the goal of your property? It's not your property uber alles, your property, your money over everything. So no, it's meant to serve. It's meant to serve something. So what's it serving here? That you're taking this person who clearly hasn't had the best influences in his life or has not been making good decisions, and he has to live with you. And hopefully you're a normal person with a normal family, right? You can see the relationship between you and your wife, right? You can see the relationship between the parents and their children, between the siblings themselves. And through seeing this more wholesome example, hopefully he'll be rehabilitated. And by being surrounded by such an example, he'll become a better person. So now you're using your property, right? What was originally stolen and was a right that you're asserting, is now ended with you teaching through your personal example to someone who's less fortunate. So that is the introduction of an Eved Ivri, and that really introduces us to the overall goal of Mishpatim. And this is to say that, like, if you have money, but you're always hearkening back to the message of Sinai, right? That ma rishonim mi Sinai, right? Just as the first mitzvahs were from Sinai, so af elu mi Sinai. So you're going back to that original message to see, well, hang on, what's the point of my property? What's the point of having this wealth? The answer is that to help other people be better people, and that's the ultimate goal. Mishpatim are really meant to benefit society. It's to protect others, and it's so right. It's meant to protect others, the innocent, from criminals, but it's also this attempt to make sure that there are no criminals at all, right? That we use what's ours to benefit society. And we see this message once more in ayin tachat ayin, the infamous an eye for an eye. So first, we know in Jewish thought that that's clearly not to be taken literally. When we say an eye for an eye, we mean that if you take someone's eye out, then you have to pay them certain damages. But so that we know that. Now the question is, well, how do we know that? And we know that through the discussion of the Gemara. Go see, I think, the 9th parak of Bava Kama. But there's another question. This is to say, well, given that it's property damage, why does the Torah say an eye for an eye? That's pretty extreme language. And we have to understand that, after all, if the Torah wanted to say pay him a monetary amount, we have that in Mishpatim. That is to say, if you damage someone's property or you damage someone's animal, or say someone else's animal comes and damages your property, then you need to pay the damages. Well, okay. So clearly that's the same conclusion of ayin tachat ayin. So why doesn't the Torah say that? And the answer here, says Rav Bernstein, is it's meant for shock value. Because imagine you're walking through your country's code, be it Israel, England, the United States Code annotated Canadian law, and you're going through all the laws, all the details, what you need to do, and I say, oh, what happens if I take someone's eye out? We'll take your eye out. That will probably cause quite a reaction. That's going to have an emotional impact on you. And that's in order for you to realize that this eye that you're paying back, even though it's true you're paying a monetary amount, it's not a piece of property, right? You just damaged a person. That's not the same thing. And we see this in the Rambam. He says, why does it say ayin tachat ayin and not just pay monetary damages? Because it's telling you that that's what you deserve. You deserve to have your eye taken out. That's not what we do practically, but on an ideological level, that is what we would do. And so we see through this constant, this repetition of needing to be careful of other people's person and other people's moral stature through taking in this thief and hopefully training him and influencing him to be a more positive role model. We see that the overall goal is not only to make sure that justice is served, but also, in Rav Bernstein's words, that justice should not have to be served at all. Shabbat Shalom.